And we are live with our 215th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my, or is it Twitter? Is it X now?
X, whatever.
Anyways.
Yeah. X, formerly known as Twitter.
X, formerly known. Yeah, the artist formerly known as Twitter. X. Or maybe it's just a symbol. Joined by my co-host, Seth Law, at Seth Law on X/Twitter/ we're not really sure. Seth, say hi.
Wow, this is just like throwing off our script on a daily basis. I don't know how we're going to handle it moving forward. Welcome to another episode. Super excited to be back. Ken and I were out last week for DEF CON and training and all the things related to that. This episode, as usual, is sponsored by Redpoint Security. Thanks to Redpoint. Redpoint specializes in code security for coders, bolstered by years of experience testing web and mobile applications, conducting secure code reviews against all types of applications, including AI and Web3 apps. It also offers trainings to help ground your team in better security practices across the development lifecycle. So check out redpointsecurity.com for more information and put your company on a path to better security. As far as other items, thanks to Redpoint, as always, we just got notified this morning, actually, right? I'm not sure if we haven't even talked about it yet, right? But we will be doing practical secure code review at Texas Cyber Summit at the end of September. We haven't done kind of those open trainings like further east, so I'm excited. Austin, I don't think we've ever taught in Austin, unless I'm off, Ken.
No, this is awesome to hear. Cool. I'm actually finding this out. So cool. That's we had talked about it, whether to do it or not, but cool. That's awesome to hear. That's the 25th and 26th September next month.
Yeah, I think the trainings are 25th, 26th. I just posted the link in the YouTube chat. September 25th, 26th. So we'll be in Austin at the Marriott, apparently, and we'll be running the course as usual. One of the things that we did put in for, and I don't think it's posted yet, but they're going to accept it, is the open source walkthrough. We're going to do a 2-hour workshop block as well associated with the Cyber Summit. I'll probably run that because I make Ken run the walkthrough during the session, but we're going to pull up an open source app and just go at it like we would in the course. But so we won't do a full introduction to the framework or the methodology that we use, but more like what we've done as After Dark episodes, right? So Ken and I will put that together and run just a couple hour workshop of pulling apart a code base.
So Texas Cyber Summit's not 2-day course; it's 2 hours.
No. There's the 2-day pre-training course, and then I'm also going to run a workshop for 2 hours during the summit. Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, all right, cool. I'm glad I asked because I was actually a little confused on that too. Okay, cool. Yep.
So for those that I don't know if they can't make the trainings or whatever, they can get a taste of it during the workshop of what it is, what it looks like. I mean, you won't get the same practice in a workshop. Obviously, it's only a couple hours, but it will be it'll be very similar to watching one of the After Dark episodes, and we'll, and maybe there'll be shots involved and swear words. I don't know where it's not recorded. So, outside of that, we were at DEF CON last week. There is also the opportunity up in Seattle, November 1st and 2nd, I want to say, for the other DEF CON trainings. Yeah. Yep. November 1st and 2nd.
I think something like that. Yeah.
Yep. So there's a couple of different, training courses on the calendar for us, right? If you're interested, jump on in, let us know. I've been getting more and more interest in people that hit me up on LinkedIn and other things. So I think we'll start doing some sort of a mailing list or something like that where we can notify people that maybe aren't watching the podcast when the different opportunities pop up. Just thoughts that I'm having. So, outside of that,
I did want to
go ahead. No, that's about all that
I was just going to mention kind of like our happy hour what kind of went down. I did also want to because dry run security, my company plugged it, and because we're getting to the stage where we can start having people use our product more widely, I did want to pitch dry run real quick. They did co-sponsor with Redpoint the happy hour, so I did want to talk a little bit about that. As time goes on, not that obviously this podcast is a pitch for it, but I think it's some interesting concepts that are going to kind of change some aspects of AppSec in the future. And I know, don't say that lightly. I really believe that. So I figure I'll just kind of talk about it real quick, and then we can move on with the podcast, and I can stop being a shameless plug guy for my own company. Anyway, so dry run security, basically we realize that developers get limited and noisy application security feedback. So we give them an automated security buddy on code changes, pull requests. Specifically right now inside of GitHub, we will support other platforms in the future. But for right now, we give them an automated security buddy on their pull requests to find risky code changes. So we use more than just a singular data point, which is a scan tool. We use a combination of factors to create what we call context, right? To tell you if you are introducing a risky code change. It's pretty simple. But then further than that, you need to actually have that stuff triaged on a wider scale. Going to a security champion, going to a security team's not really going to, help you scale truly. So we use, we harness AI, and we use some very specific knowledge bases we've curated, as well as customer knowledge bases as they see fit to answer questions that developers are asking in an automated fashion without talking to a human being. There are escalation paths after that. But in any case, that's kind of what it comes down to, is using more than just a 60% accurate pattern matching scanner. I think there's a lot of other interesting data points to use. So anyways, that's enough of my shameless plugging. We do have a contextual security guide out. I have heard you. I do know that some folks are not happy it's behind a wall. Do understand also, we are a seed stage startup who is trying to market as much as possible and grow our customer base. So my apologies for the having to enter in some information, but for us it's a little bit necessary. So I'll put this in the YouTube chat. It'll be my last little plug here. Here's the CSA guide. Talks a little bit about some of the facts. It's kind of a tease to a degree, but it does talk about. I wouldn't say it's a tease. It's the concepts aren't a tease. Maybe it teases out the product a bit, but we use a bunch of different factors to actually, like I said, determine risk. So, I think beyond that, I'm done. I think that's the last bit of that. No, so, and do expect I will be showing this stuff just because I think it's fun and interesting. And there's a whole other range of things that Sorry, Seth. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say it feeds in pretty easily or pretty nicely into some of the discussion that we're going to have about stuff we saw at DEF CON. So, yeah, you're going to go ahead and wrap up, though.
No. Just that you and I, exactly. No, you and I have been talking a lot about it, and DEF CON was, we'll get into it. It's very interesting. I think we have a lot of ideas for how every once in a while, foundational technology comes along that allows you to take a bunch of concepts you couldn't weaponize before and turn it into something meaningful. And I think that's where we're at. So,
well, and I did even notice, recently, in chat, right? One of the things, I think it was Eli was asking about different DAS tools, right? Impressions, and Eric brought up the fact that, right, the number of false positives, and actually somebody could use AI/ML to solve some of that, and start to actually reduce those false positives, give people actual actionable data. And this has been the discussion point around machine learning and AI specifically, with the GPTs and the other AIs that have been in the news, right? I know we're in a hype cycle right now, so everybody's talking about AI. But I think applying that to what we do on a daily basis and using it alongside of an expert, right, making it an expert system, is realistically what is going to change for us, right? I'd love to see it integrated into the results of what Burp Suite is doing, the results of any of the DAS scanners, the SAS scanners that are out there, so that it can point me more quickly at what's important. And this goes to the course specifically. Ken and I have already started to talk about how we can improve the course and secure code review using ML, right? Actually dropping code into ML and identifying patterns based on what. Sorry, I got Concred going on too, but based on what patterns.
God, don't get me started on that.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't win the COVID lottery down there, but I definitely won the Concred lottery. So, yeah. But so I think there's going to be a lot, like to your point, as far as like getting context out more quickly from the questions that we have about code bases, about scanning, about everything else, is just going to give us. It's going to make us more powerful as we move forward, right? That's all that I see.
Yeah, I mean, concrete example would be like think about how the evolution of our course, right? When we first started, we were like, well, you have two options with like we talk about like how to find routes, right? So one example in one of the exercises is it's an Express.js app, and we're like, well, you have really two options, primary options. One is to search for like .put, .post, .get, whatever, .use. It's okay, it's not great, but all right, cool. And then the other is to actually ask Express. We give in our course, in our materials, we give like a way to interrogate Express, ask it some questions about its routes. That's great and everything. Then as time went on, we were like, well, you know what? Let's create some semgrep rules. So we started showing people how to create semgrep rules to do that same thing and speed all that up, and that helps speed it up. And then we're at this other point where it's like, okay, cool, all that like that was cool, but like there's a new iteration of ways to do this in a more agnostic way. And I think that's the iteration that we're seeing now is like, okay, there's a lot of, like you said, manual work that can like be eliminated. Now, the thing I do hear people criticize pretty often is like, well, how accurate is it? And that's just taking that question and breaking that down. I mean, that's we could go down a long conversation just on that bit alone, and I will summarize it by saying that is up to you on how accurate it is. And then also, let me ask you all another question. How accurate do you think your scanners are? And we'll leave it at that, honestly. Right. So in any case, that's what I'm trying to say is like, and I think that's what we've been trying to say. And what we've been talking about is like, there's a lot of like manual steps that we've had to do, or we've had maybe some incremental tool improvements. And we're like, oh, that was cool. And now there's this whole other thing that's like, man, the more you get into it, the more, and let's dispel some common misconceptions. And I apologize because Stefan was on here talking about AI and I caught, it's like, I was in Mexico, right? So I had like, and
what?
I was like,
you can't take vacations. That's crappy. Come on.
I'm literally like in a hotel room looking at the phone, like while the family's getting ready, like trying to follow along, and the internet's kind of, it's okay, but it's not, it's not perfect. And then getting asked. So I was trying to follow along. I don't know if you covered this, but there's the one thing that I will say, I just want to cover one big misconception that I always hear from people, which is like, how many data points do you have? How big is your LLM? How, all of that. And it's like, yeah, I don't know if like that's not all that. If you're chaining a bunch of different things onto an existing LLM, it's not that important to have 185 billion data points. That's not the point. The point is to take some small minimal based off of the context, which consists of like prompts, AI, human, and system prompts. Take that all together, contextually compress. So find essentially the vector documents or data that matches, what you're looking for, and then chain that onto an LLM. And that's like the way that you get far more accurate answers. It's not just like forget those other LLMs. I'm just going to create my own massive training data set. And not to say that that's not also helpful, of course, but I am saying like it's a common misconception that I saw when we were talking to people at DEF CON. Every single person seemed to make that assumption that was required. And then as I started to dig into folks who were like kind of cynical about AI, I realized like, and this is not criticizing any individual, but I did realize like all of them are actually not that. Everybody was not that really well versed in AI at all. In fact, the people that were all fairly cynical about what it could do really didn't understand or haven't really used it. And so anyways, that was my realization, a couple epiphanies. What did you take away? And Seth,
yes,
people are like, I know. I saw the shirts, ChatGPT won't save you and all that stuff. So I'd like to hear your wise sage.
My wise. Should I put on my NPR voice? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
We'll
temper the excitement.
Temper the excitement. AI is not magical, right? LLMs are not magical. It's it's math. Let's cut it back to that. It's math.
It's math.
And there are problems. It's math. But I'm with you, right? There's a lot of talk. Again, it's the hype cycle that we're in right now. There's a lot of talk about what they can do, how useful they actually are. I mean, honestly, I think one of the best introductions, especially for people in our space, is just to go ignore ChatGPT for a little bit and go use Copilot as your coding, right? If you want to get to know what an LLM actually does, how it functions, go use Copilot and realize what the limitations there are. It's predictive text, right? Like it's predicting what the next tokens, what the next thing is that you're going to be based on everything that it's seen before. So it does a fairly good job at that. It's very useful. It can speed up what you're doing, but with the caveat that you still need an expert to, number one, generate the prompts so that it is what you expect it to be. And number two, to validate what the results are going to be to make it useful, right? And there's some techniques that you can use to improve things. One of the talks that I want to get to from DEF CON specifically goes around that and how they went about improving the AI and how useful it was to have it fix itself, that kind of thing. But in general, the hype around it, the fear, it's a lot of FUD right now, right? Fear, uncertainty, doubt. And we've got the two sides of AI is going to save us all to AI is going to ruin everything. And that's not the case. It's never been the case when it comes to the technological tools that we utilize, right? So I guess that's my take, right? Like
it's like, let's exactly. Let's put it in perspective. It is like essentially some level of statistical analysis at very large data
scale
sets.
Yes.
But it's there's a lot of things that can speed up. It's not the end all be all, but it isn't very interesting. It does provide some value that I haven't seen anything like I just haven't seen anything like this in a long time. So it's blowing my mind the more I work with it. The farther I get into it, I realize because it's so new, there actually aren't, it's kind of funny. You do have a lot of like folks that have been working in neural nets and, deep machine learning and have done all of this work. And I don't want to say, I mean, it's all very relevant for sure. I would say though, that skill set is actually, it's great because you know what the underlying, like how it all works, right? Underneath it all. But to be honest with you, what I am noticing, because I've had to talk to a lot of advisors, around who are AI experts. Basically, because everything's so early and all the tool sets around are so early, and if you go and you look at like tutorials and you look at like YouTube videos, you'll get that feeling because what you'll see is a lot of them are surface level, right? They cover sort of like a specific tool chain. It's kind of surface level for a specific need. It's most of the tutorials are fairly basic is what I'm trying to say. And so so there's so many things I could say here, but I would say like out of I don't know, we'll say 30 tutorials, probably good 25 of those are going to be very, very basic and very similar, just covering a different tool set or a different way of using that tool set. So what I'm trying to say is you have all these folks who spent a bunch of time trying to build what now is easily accessible to everybody. So those people do have that like deep understanding, and that's great. But to be honest with you, for everybody else, you're basically a practitioner at this point using the technology. You're not the scientist developing it. And so now what you're seeing is a lot of people who are kind of just still kind of grasp how to most efficiently use it, which tool sets to use. There are a lot of options out there. That was one thing I experienced myself, because I mean, I haven't talked too much about it publicly, but I've spent the last few months, like really, especially the last couple months, just really digging in on this subject. And it's still early days, man. It's still early days. A lot of people are still just trying to figure things out. There's a lot of it's an exciting time.
It is. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, right? Like, I know we've talked about it, you and I, and with other people, especially as we're down at DEF CON, but what is the path that you recommend that people take to actually learn about it, to actually like utilize it? Okay, there's one thing about, to your point, right? There's one thing about like the deep machine learning, how it actually functions, but we're getting to the point, and I feel like we're going to do a disservice to ourselves if we don't understand how to actually use the tech, right? That's where we're going to get left behind in the next 2 to 5 years, is if we can't turn and start to utilize machine learning and these models to actually improve our process and improve what it is we do on a daily basis. And this is one of the reasons that we're going to iterate on the course, right? We know that it's going to affect a code review. I know that it is. So we got to figure out exactly where we can apply it so that it can speed that up and it can help us out. But where do you suggest that people turn to? Like, where do you start? Because I know you've done a lot with LangChain and sweet, yep, that book. Right?
No, I happen to have this book right next to me. Very thin read, but it's pretty nice for just getting like actually Dan Cornell recommended this to me. Stephen Wolfram's What is ChatGPT Doing? There's Wolfram something solution, but basically it's one of the many products that Stephen Wolfram's put out. Super well-known data scientist. That's a great place to just understand what's kind of happening behind the scenes. But you mentioned LangChain. There's like some tooling. So the good and the bad. If you use a tool set like LangChain, which if you're not familiar with that is, with what that is, it's a library. It can be either Node.js or it can be written in Python. It's very modular, right? So why is it modular is because if it depends on what you want to do, right? Like you might want to, I don't know, split PDFs and chunk those up and embed them into a vector DB. But then you say, okay, well, what kind of vector DB? And that's up to you. And that's modular, right? So that's a first example. Actually, even just what you're uploading and chunking and how you're doing it, that's modular. You can use a bunch of different libraries for PDFs. I think they offer 5 different libraries just for parsing PDFs, and then for data stores, and then for creating embedded models, and then for placing those chaining those embedded models. There's all kinds. I mean, there's a crazy amount. There's ways to make things faster. You've got in-memory chain options. There's a whole slew of things that something like a LangChain or another type of library might actually provide you. That's the awesome side of it. The downside is, you may not get as so it's very quick for development. It's very quick to start getting up to speed. And then if you want to go deeper, though, then that's when you kind of start eliminating some of that. But that's going to be like a longer, harder road. Truth be told, maybe the easiest way to think about doing it is using a service like, similar to kind of, I was messing around with a few different ones, like SaaS providers. I mean, so like Baseplate, for instance, as I was showing you, that's a really quick way to do some experimentation. Upload some data real quick, create some contextual prompts, and get off to the races and just start playing around. So that's really helpful to get started, but it doesn't really give you any insight into what's going on, really, just how to use that platform. And it kind of gives you some. So then if you move on to something like some library, like I mentioned, then okay, cool. You get a little bit more granular understanding, actually a lot more granular understanding of kind of what's going on and how it's all working. And then if you go and you remove that altogether, that's obviously the most raw version of figuring out what's going on and how it all works. So but my step, for me, I mean, it'd probably be like, hey man, write a script, get going,
Yeah. Well, and that's pretty typical for what we recommend. Right? It's one thing to talk about it. It's one thing to, listen to what everybody else is saying, but it's another to actually use it and to start to apply those ideas that pop up as you use the technology on your, on your current process, on your current, within your current job. And it's going to look different for everyone. I mean, just like everybody uses Burp in a slightly different way, everybody has their own tips and tricks that they use. You're going to start generating your own prompts. You're going to start generating your own unique way of actually interacting with that data. But it's one of the things I'm still early days in it as well, right? Like actually chopping that up and like utilizing it from a more custom approach is one of the things that I'm starting to get to now. as opposed to, oh, I'm just asking ChatGPT and I'm just asking Copilot to like predict some things for me. There's so much more to explore there from a daily basis on what we're currently doing that it's almost, I understand people's reticence because it's almost overwhelming, right? And I know you've run into that as well. Is it's like, where do I start, right?
I know. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
gave you a link. I think so I do have one more helpful link that I think really explains things and breaks down. If you want to get started real quickly, and get a good feel for just how things are working. I believe I did share this with you, Seth, but let me share this
Yeah.
with everybody else. This has been, I think, the best succinct article for quickly getting up to speed, creating a chatbot using your own data set. So like, and a good example, for our product, again, I'm not trying to pitch, but I will explain. Like for us, like a good example would be, one of the things that we offer folks is like, hey, if you want, like, let's say your developers want to ask, all right, well, you've said that this is an anti-pattern for how we write authorization functions. Where do I find out more information on how we write authorization functions? Well, because you have the customer's data, if they give you the secure coding guide or whatever other materials that they have, you can use their information to answer that question accurately and say, go look here. Also, here's the information from that document that you're probably going to want. Stuff like that. I mean, that's if you don't think there's power in that, and it's very accurate. Again, only if you do things right. It's up to you. It's not like this is magic. It actually does require some bits do feel a bit like magic, but it really is up to you on how well you fine tune things to get it to be accurate. And man, you can do some pretty cool things. And I just have a hard time believing there's no value in that, or that's like just some hyped thing. It's like, no, man, like if you're two people supporting 1,000 developers, tell me how that doesn't help you. So,
Yes.
anyways,
Yeah.
all right.
Well, and
So
okay, to that, to that point, right? Like, okay, I want to show one of the useful projects or the useful talks that came out of DEF CON. It was on Sunday afternoon, so it was like I don't know how many people actually attended this. The paper itself, here I'm just posting directly to the presentation on media.defcon.org. But the name of this talk was, here I got to go to the top so I can actually see it. LLMs at the forefront, pioneering the future of fuzz testing in a rapidly changing world. Basically, and the subtext here is ChatGPT, write me fuzz tests for this source code. What the X did in this case, the researcher, is ask ChatGPT to generate fuzzing tests for open source projects, specifically Python projects, that did not currently have unit tests to actually fuzz test those projects. And he ran through doing tests against, I think, 20 or 40 different projects that were open source, like PyPy libraries being used on a daily basis across the spectrum or across the ecosystem, the Python ecosystem, and his experience in actually generating those. Super interesting, super applicable use of ChatGPT for, creating functions and then running those functions against it to see what would actually spit out. The project itself you can find on GitHub, using LangFuzz and the different modules, what he actually wrote, but the results are there in that presentation. And to anyone that says, again, like there's no use here, there's no real world, like, there's no real world application for LLMs. This is a direct contradiction to that, right? You're seeing it actually find fuzz vulnerabilities in these libraries. This is going to speed up development cycles. It's going to speed up bug finding across the infrastructure. And it just makes me excited that, hey, we can take this same idea and apply it on a custom basis, especially with what you're talking about, right? Like you're working with a company, yeah, it may be sensitive code, but we could take we could drop all that code into a private vector database, apply the same sorts of techniques to it, and generate this without publicly releasing that code, it's just going to get better is basically what I'm saying is we're going to get better at applying those LLMs, applying these techniques to projects at large. And that's one of the things that Tree Wizard or X here is actually concentrating on, is expanding out from Python to other languages and supporting a wide multitude of projects and frameworks there. So I mean, that was one that I got super excited about starting to think about it. And I was looking around and I'm like, I don't know how many people that are actually in this talk recognize like the game-changing nature of what's going on here, right? This is stuff I'd all have to do by hand before, right?
Correct. That's what I think. I think it's going to empower and take away a lot of the manual garbage that we kind of have to think about, and allow us to really do the cool creative things that only we are capable of, but reduce our time sinks by a lot. And not just our time, but the time of our tools to run. There's a whole, again, there's some things like I've said enough, I think, for today on what all I'm doing. But, anyways, I won't preach, I won't continue preaching this for too much, but I will say, like, don't sleep on it. If you are curious, or if you're cynical but you haven't like spent a lot of time dig in first and then form your opinion. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, by the way, I was telling, so I noticed Jason Haddock's WebSec GPT is in here, which, by the way, it was really cool to see Jason. He looks great. He looks like he's living his best life these days. But I actually didn't see a link to where is WebSec GPT code out, like open source. I'm trying to find it, just because it's mentioned in that PDF you provided from the DEF CON talk.
Yeah,
I was just trying to.
I don't know. I would imagine it's on his. I'm looking at his GitHub right now, but I don't know if I've actually seen it in there yet. Right? Yeah.
Cool. Well, your AI
sub-recon GPT.
That's funny. Jason. Yeah, I said it's like Jason, man. Like, hey, dude, let's talk. So, cool. All right. Yeah. Well,
and that was partially like one of the things that was great about DEF CON this year is I feel like we reconnected with a bunch of past guests and other like new people. We've got a whole slate of people that will be coming on the podcast. Like Jivon's coming back on, Haddix is going to come back on. I don't even know. I know we've got a bunch scheduled. Like Aaron's been working through that for us. So over the course of the next like 4 months, we're going to have all sorts of, again, people that we know and love back on the podcast to talk about what their current work is and what they've been doing. So
we talk about how scary that was in the beginning of the happy hour. For those who attended, and there was a decent crowd that showed up. And like you said, that it was awesome to see Juan. It was awesome to see a lot of people. I mean, we had like Brian, who was just on from Impart Security. Brian Joe was and his crew. Actually, the entire Impart Security crew was over there. Jivon was there. Justin and we'll talk about that in a second because that was pretty funny. But Justin Collins was there. Evan Johnson from Runnerville. Some hubbers I had worked with, which I'm trying to get the red team from GitHub to hop on and actually talk about some of the fun adventures they've had. Definitely heard some interesting stuff, the work they've been doing. Anyways, just a good, lots of other people. Sorry if I didn't mention you. We did hand out T-shirts and stickers, and it was a good time. But I will say this, the way it started, dude, do you want to walk people through how it started? Because we showed up an hour before it was set to kick off to make sure everything was good.
Yeah.
And Justin Collins, we were running into right at that same time as we were entering into the bar to like check on it too. So he's with us as this is happening.
Yeah, Ken goes up to the bartender, and the bartender basically looks at him like he's crazy, right? Like we've scheduled this through like the event management staff, And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We never do events here. And yeah, hey, well, we can get you a pitcher of beer, and there's some, some tables over there that you guys could talk at. We're like, no. A pitcher of
we
beer.
won't bog you down with what we spent, but it wasn't cheap. So a pitcher of beer.
Yeah.
Not having it.
Not having it. No. It ended up working out. The event management people finally showed up like a half hour before, and they got, the food and everything like that. But dude, the bartender that was just like, yeah, screw you guys, leave me alone.
I think they moved us from that one area to the other area, which we didn't realize at the time had the only like ramp for people that need, wheelchair
mobility,
accessible or
the
mobility,
ramp.
However you would say it. Yeah, exactly. So like so we had to keep opening up the rope to let them through. Shout out to O'Shea's in Las Vegas. Great job, guys. Really nailed it. Anyways, but yeah, hey, it did turn out. The spread was great. Drinks were strong, too strong, almost. Yeah, it was really great. It was really great to see everybody, though. It was a super, super fun event. Man, was that a fun way to start out the
DEF CON week?
Yeah, that was because I had landed maybe hours before that, not even so. Which it was cool. Like, so you were there. Could you walk me through this? Because so for everybody, Monday is kind of when unless I'm wrong, Monday's where the festivities kind of all kick off, beginning with Black Hat. And but then like you came in pretty early, so you were there for what, like a week or something like? Because I didn't come in until Thursday.
Yeah, I didn't. I came in on Wednesday, and there were a couple of things that I did that were like, because that's midst of Black Hat. Black Hat is like the briefings go Wednesday, Thursday, and then Monday, Tuesday are the trainings, right? Typically for Black Hat. And then B-Sides and the other events are running at the same time, as well as things like Diana Initiative, and there was SquadCon this year, and there was just like, there is so much that you can actually go and do depending on who it is that you're dealing with and who you want to actually interact with. And that's one of the things that's great about Hacker Summer Camp or whatever you want to call it. But on the flip side, that's one of the reasons why it's so overwhelming, right? From a Black Hat perspective, Black Hat's super expensive. Let's be honest. It's a corporate event. It is. It's definitely more business focused, and but a lot of the research is the same, right? The briefings at Black Hat, those researchers will present at both Black Hat and DEF CON a lot of times. They're, definitely sister conferences when it comes down to that. The other ones that run like B-Sides and Diana Initiative are more of a, alternative to what's going on at Black Hat and DEF CON and even SquadCon, right? They're run by people that want to give other groups an avenue to speak. Maybe, Black Hat's not your thing. DEF CON is great, DEF CON is great. Sorry. B-Sides is great for, hey, maybe it's not, you don't want to be as corporate, but you still want to see and chill, hear some good talks and, see some other things. But it can be overwhelming. Like I was saying, you've got to have some way to actually navigate that. I wasn't intending to, but that's where I'd plug Hacker Tracker or whatever we're going to call it. We're going to change the name at some point in the near future. But the scheduling app that we do for DEF CON that allows you to actually search for and flag items and kind of plan out your schedule and your days, because we did have B-Sides in there this year. We did have Diana Initiative. We did have DEF CON. You could kind of track across everything as far as what you're interested in. So yeah, there's just a lot going on, right? It's overwhelming on top of the fact that it's in Vegas, right? And I know some of the people that are there for the first time, right? That's always the big discussion point, is holy crap, right? DEF CON in and of itself is basically 8 to 10 security conferences all running at the same time. Right? So you've got AppSec Village, or you've got like application security content across the board. You've got InfoSec content everywhere. You've got the main talks that are all pretty deep research, but then you've got Recon Village, Red Team, AppSec Village, and all of those are running their own track schedule and talk schedule as well. I don't think you're going to find that anywhere else in the world, that there's that much going on, that much content, that much research being presented at, all at the same time. And with that comes 30,000 plus people that are all like mixing on top of your regular Las Vegas crowd. And yeah, it's just a recipe for, it's an introvert's nightmare, basically, right? At some level. Yeah.
I mean, if your hotel room's right there, you can just sneak back to your room if you get overwhelmed. I've done that many a times. I still have to like duck out sometimes just to get a little overwhelming, especially with that many people and that small. And like Vegas is already, can we just say Vegas is already like, and you mentioned introverted. If you're introverted, if you just really don't enjoy like a ton of noises and all that, it's like, oh man, like nothing, like sight, sounds, harsh smells, all that stuff. It's a bit much, right? So then you factor in packing, and you told me it was something like 30,000 attendees or something like that.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And it's all kind of spread out, but know what does help? These guys and gals, folks, people made this app. It's pretty awesome. It's called Hacker Tracker. Have you heard of it? It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I used it. It was all right. It was all right.
Yeah.
I got some qualms. I got some things I got to talk to these people about. But overall, it's an acceptable app.
Acceptable. It can help out. Right? That was the whole point of it.
No, actually, it was super helpful too, because I was trying to meet Jivon, and those maps are killer, man. That really actually helped a lot. So kudos. Actually, do you want to walk people through what it's like the week of with Hacker Tracker? Like, because I always find it, you kind of don't realize, but I always ask you about it because I actually find it really interesting. Maybe others will, like what, because you have your initial sort of like, you put it all together, get all the stuff, the information in there for the conference. But then like, obviously there's things that need to be like bugs that crop up and things that people, report, or I'm sure other things too. So like, what's it look like week of and week before?
Yeah. I mean, the couple weeks before are, dude, it's a shit show, right? Like it's okay.
He's got it all under control is what he means by that.
Yeah. Now that there's a team of us, right? And kudos to a Null Value and Advice and Derail, like the other guys that help out with it. Because at this point, we're running basically we're the main content stream for DEF CON. So for info.defcon.org and the apps, the iOS and Android app, we've got Drew, who's leading the team, who's kind of the point of contact for all the scheduling stuff. There's a back-end management system that we've written to actually allow us to update things and push them out. Day of con is always like Thursday this year. I think I pushed out 4 or 5 different versions of the iOS app, fixing different little just bugs that were bothering me, right? That's what it has to raise to for me to actually push things out, is like, oh crap, like this doesn't work like I want it to work for this next 3 days. So I'm going to actually go in and fix it. There are still a few things. There's always things that I wish that I could have gotten to. It's like any development effort, right? But week of the conference, like we meet down there on Wednesday to make sure that like we've got the schedule settled, that the apps are at least ready to go, that there's nothing crazy that's there, that we've got contacts on each of the villages with DEF CON proper as well. And then launching it to just like monitoring what's going on with all the different researchers, with the different talks, with the different events, having people notify us, let us know what's going, what's changed so we can reflect that accurately in the apps is always a crazy thing. And then this year as well, right? Like with the whole, bomb threat at Caesars Forum on Friday night where people were clearing out. So we're trying to notify people about that. You and I were down at Fremont Street as all that was going down.
Like, what the hell? Yeah, I forgot about that. Man.
So I was texting with Drew or with the Null Value and those guys as we're trying to like he's got the main like stream with the DEF CON folks, and he's handling that, but we're still trying to push all that out to make sure that people know what's going on, what they can expect. And it's just there's so many moving pieces, as I guess what people don't realize. It's not like we have a set schedule and everyone gives us everything, a month in advance so we can actually plan it out and make sure it's all like in the app. Like we're getting feeds from villages the day before things go live in formats that, we've gotten better over time, but in formats like they'll drop us a PDF that we have to hand like rip data out of to actually import into the event manager, right? And like even after we've told them for years and years, just give us a CSV, give us something that we can actually like parse programmatically, and here's a JSON format, here's like everything else. And then on top of that, this year, I don't know if people did, realize this, for the merch line at DEF CON, the QR codes and the in-app process for actually building a pick list to help speed up the merch line at DEF CON was a huge upgrade as far as like the app itself, right? Like we've never tried to have merch in there previously, and then coordinating with the merch staff and the, QR code scanning, building that out behind the scenes. It was just there's a lot of effort that goes into it. I mean, but that you could say that for DEF CON at large, right? There's just so much effort, and we're constantly looking to improve things. So if you did use the app, there was something that bothered you that you want to upgrade on, ping me, right? Like, or click contact us and send us an email in the app, and we'll get at it, right? Like we'll fix it for next year. So I don't know if that answered any of your questions, but
yeah. Heck yeah, it did, man. I find all that to be like pretty interesting, just because there's it's a volunteer effort, right? So I mean, you're putting in a lot of time and effort, even if you get like I don't know, like even if you're get some kind of goon status or whatever it might be from it. It's dude, it's not actually, I don't even know how that's not like that's volunteer work. You're not getting some huge benefit out of it. I'm saying you, but I mean really that the folks that are working, because I know it's bigger than just you. At this point, you pulled in quite a bunch of folks. So hey, speaking of the conflict, by the way,
yes, do you want to talk about that?
What the hell, man? Like, I am just now okay today. Like, I came back. I mean, I think you flew back the next. So I arrived because I had you're a 45-minute flight away. I'm 5 hours. So, and I've got a 3-hour time zone jump ahead. So for me, it was like getting in on Wednesday morning, but really I left Tuesday night. You left Wednesday, got home probably not too much farther in the day than I did on Wednesday. So then and I remember you saying you weren't feeling great, and I remember some people on our Slack saying they weren't feeling great, and I was like, oh man, that stinks, whatever. Didn't think anything of it. By Thursday and Friday, man, I was not feeling mentally like myself at all. I was feeling really like just bad, and then by Friday night feeling physically bad, and then by Saturday just wrecked, man. Like bad stomach flu, bad feet. I was like drenched in sweat trying to like lay down and recuperate, just from chills and stuff like that. Took COVID at home COVID test, was fine, in the sense of COVID, but it was just, I mean, it wasn't until really today that I'm like feeling any better. I don't know about how long did you. That was rough. Like doing that. By the way, doing this thing where we hang out and get 3 hours of sleep every night at 40 plus years old. That is not the same world as 20 years ago. It's like not the same. My God, is it horrible, dude?
Yeah,
the physical ramifications are real.
We don't do that as much anymore, right? Like it's now. I have a tendency to. We'll call it a little earlier, and I wake up a little bit later, and but yeah, I mean, my experience, I was feeling it, whatever, like the last day of us teaching, right? Like I just was dragging after being in Vegas for a week, and I thought maybe but I got home and tested, no COVID, but I've been just like, niggling along, right? As far as like, I definitely had have some sort of, virus / con flu, whatever going on. And it's getting better, but it still is I mean, we joke about it every single year, but it happens every single time, right? You have 30,000 people coming from all over the world in a confined space, and that's where that's what happens, right? Yeah, we share germs. That's
Yeah, and I haven't really avoided, like, for me, I'm not like a high risk for anything else, right? And I'm not just talking about COVID or anything. I just mean in general, like if I get sick, you get sick. We're not like high risk or anything like that for anything. So I don't tend to shy away from shaking people's hands, having like, but there is of course like, right, exactly. I never have. Don't plan on it. Maybe if I was ever at high risk, I would, but I don't. So there's an elevated risk when you haven't been con hopping as frequently as a few years ago. By the way, that was funny, by the way, when O'Shea's was like, oh yeah, pandemic, we haven't really done many of these events. I was like, or no, he said they hadn't done any of these because it's because of the pandemic. They hadn't done any events, just period. Yeah. I was like, surely that's not true. Okay, sure. Anyways, all right. I'm done bagging on them. I think we'll see. Shout out to O'Shea's. Great job.
Shout out. Great job. Good job. We might pick a different place next time. Yeah,
we might pick a different place. So yeah, no, it was like physically that is a tough thing to do. I definitely, I think like by the nights that we train though, I think that's when we finally. You have to get sleep because like neither of us can train people and not sleep. So at least we had those couple of nights of rest. Yeah. And the class, the one thing I will say about DEF CON versus most of the other the places that we've given training is that DEF CON's unique in, I think, our attendees, right? Because we get people from all over. We get from, it's not like pen testers or just this or just that. It's actually for it being DEF CON, I'm thinking about the math and I think maybe there was like a third of the class that were developers actually, which was really surprising. And then we did have some pen testers, we had some code reviewers, we had some generalist security people, and I like that because I think it's really cool to see people that don't have that traditional or haven't even dabbled in it really get up to speed very quickly. So that was really fun, and it's one of the unique things I like about training at DEF CON. Whereas most of the time it's you have people that have at least some experience in code review, usually definitely in coding, and yeah, it's just it's cool. It's just a nice change of pace, I guess.
Yep. No, it was really good, right? And I'm thinking back to some of the results that those guys had too, right? The different projects that they pulled apart during the final day's exercise and the group, stages that they did. And, we always say this, right? Like the course is about learning the process, not necessarily about finding vulnerabilities. So yeah, if anything pops out of it, that's great. But most likely like what we want to see is people struggle. We're a little sadistic that way, right? Like, hey, you've got to actually figure this out. And if you haven't seen this type of code before, it's probably even better for learning a process. But some of the notes that popped out of that and some of the, the learning that went on it was pretty impressive this time.
Very impressive.
It's always a good group.
Yeah. Very impressive. It's cool. It was fun. I'll say it again. It's cool. It's cool when you see folks who don't have that skill set walk away with that skill set after 2 days. It's like cool. And yeah, it's obviously you've got a lot of work, repetition ahead of you to use that methodology, and refine it and make it your own and all of that. But it's a starting point. And it's really cool to see. So I had fun. I look forward to the next one. It sounds like we're doing another one next month. So that'll be cool.
So we've got two.
AppSec, oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah. In terms of AppSec, what were you going to say?
No, any big AppSec news to really cover? I mean, I know there's been a lot going on, so much that I'm actually having a hard time keeping up with everything between catch up for work and everything like that. So I wasn't sure is there anything that is of huge interest that you wanted to chat about today before we hop offline in terms of AppSec news?
Yeah, I mean, go read James, or go watch James Kettle's talk on the web race condition stuff. It's new. This is smashing the state machine, like his presentation at DEF CON, a black hat. That is pretty interesting. I will want to have a wider discussion on it because what I'm finding is the more that we do deep level research into some of these topics, the almost less applicable it is across, from a consulting perspective when I'm dealing with a single organization, right? James and Jason Haddix and a lot of those guys that are doing like bug bounty stuff and wider research, looking for, kind of the needle in the haystack stuff. They have a tendency to find it, and it's great. Very interesting. I'm not going to bag on the research at all because it's very technically well done. It's finding some stuff that definitely needs to be taken care of. It needs to be addressed. But when I'm dealing with a single entity from a consulting perspective, it's a lot harder to apply. And I'm getting a lot of false positives out of that research and out of those different tools that are popping out of the wider research community. And I want to have a wider discussion on that as we move forward. But the techniques and the research itself is top notch, right? Really interesting stuff, as you would expect, coming from James Kettle, coming from the Swigger team over there, right? It's always good stuff, and it works as expected. But the other interesting thing is, we've talked about race conditions before. I know you and I have done. Have exploited race conditions within certain aspects and looking at code bases, and so it'll be interesting to see how we actually apply that one. Outside of that, I did want to call out to Jason Haddix. He spoke multiple times, updates. He's got some new tools that are out. We'll dive deeper into that when we have him on the podcast, or maybe I'll put a list together. We should probably even just do a blog post on, hey, here were the interesting things that we saw at DEF CON, the new tools that got released, because, in 2 minutes, we're not going to get through it all. But there was, even just walking into the AppSec Village, was it Checkmarks that was running? They had a secure code review or a secure code spot the bug table that they had set up, where they had different cards with code snippets on it. And you'd go over and you have to identify, oh, there's this vulnerability or this vulnerability in that card, right? Or in that code. It was super interesting to see. We are definitely getting away from just the dynamic on, inside the AppSec Village. What was super cool, which makes me want to do a secure code workshop there during DEF CON as well.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to go over to the AppSec Village and do more. I actually tried to go to the AppSec Village, but I didn't have. Apparently, my DEF CON trainer badge is not the same thing as a DEF CON badge. So I was denied access by a goon. But yeah, I would love to do that, man. I'd love to spend some time with. I actually wanted to get not one flipper. I actually wanted to get 4 flippers, by the way. And I think I was telling you I couldn't. Well, I came too late to get them too. So yeah. But anyways, it's not for just me. It's for the team. But anyway, yeah.
Sure,
I need it next year. Make sure
what are you doing to your neighbors? Come on, be honest. What are you doing to your neighbors with those flippers?
Nothing to my neighbors. Direct neighbors. No, I'm joking. No.
Yeah, but we'll summarize.
They're. Yeah, we can summarize stuff a bit more for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good to see Jason. Jason's been very active. It's been awesome. He always is, but it's been putting out a lot of good stuff lately. So
yep. There's a lot going on, right? And then that again, this the cross between AppSec and the ML, the ChatGPT stuff. We're gonna get more and more into that, and we'll be talking more about it, I'm sure, right? It's top of mind for us because we're starting to integrate it into our cycles. So, and if you are as well, make sure you're in the Slack channel, start posting what your experience is, because we're all going to learn this together, right? We'll help each other out through it. So, yep.
Oh, and yeah, I saw Larry had mentioned, sort of like the wasn't able to make it to Vegas for the happy hour and all that stuff. And so we're gonna be trying to do more of these happy hours when there's like pretty decent sizable events and we're both at them. Whether that's through our company sponsoring them or whether it's through taking sponsorship from others. We've been obviously people who are paying attention have probably noticed we've been very hesitant. Like, I don't know if anybody knows this, but we haven't actually, besides Seth and I, we have not agreed to take any sponsorship yet. It's just we haven't done it yet. We've been very careful about the way we're kind of approaching this. One of the things we don't want to turn this podcast into is some commercialized sort of thing. So we're being pretty picky there, but we'll have soon a sort of a paved road to go down to actually do this, and maybe happy hours will be a part of that. Maybe you can help out in a different way, but either way, expect those two things: more of these events getting together, getting the community together, and a road to do sponsorship if you so choose. So again, we just have to be very picky. It's one of those things that we wrestled for a long time on whether to even take sponsorship money. It's just we like to be honest and just say what we really think. So that we don't want to change that ever.
Yeah. So we'd be happy to evaluate your product, but we are going to still be honest about what we think about it, right? So, which is what it is. Right?
True facts
on Absolute AppSec. Sweet, man. All right. Well, we've been going for an hour. We'll go ahead and close things out for today. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
No, just take care of your bodies, recuperate, vitamin C, hydrate, get plenty of rest. I don't know. I'm sure there's going to be some more interesting stuff coming out this month, security wise. So now that the Black Hat DEFCON's over, what about you? Anything else you want to mention to folks before we hop off here?
Not necessarily. Outside of join the Slack channel. Let us know if anything else pops up, and otherwise plan on seeing us at Texas Cyber Summit, and we'll see about putting something together there. If you are in Austin, if you do want, we still have a few of the old style t-shirts. Oh, here's the new style, right? Like that's what I'm wearing today is AppSec. The new with the new logo. But we have the old style t-shirts, vintage, I guess we should call them. If you would like them, ping me or Ken on Slack or send us a DM and we'll get your Meat Space address and send you one, right?
They're gorgeous.
They're gorgeous. The new ones haven't been printed yet, but I think we'll do different colors as well, not just black. So, Sweet.
Yeah. Cool. Sounds good, man.
Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll catch you all online. See everybody next week.